Strong feet. Hello boys. No one else could make America laugh like they could. Audrey Meadows played Ralph's sharp-tongued wife Alice, and Art Carney played Ralph's goofy best friend Ed Norton, who stole every scene. They were magic on screen. Fans thought they were family when they weren't on TV. But something strange happened after the lovers left. Art Carney was no longer in the picture, not even a gathering or a tribute. No public comments for his co-stars. What was even stranger was that he never talked to Audrey Meadows again, not once. Why would a man who is so important to the show be so quiet? Up until now the answer has been buried for decades. When The Honeymooners first came out in 1955, it was a huge hit right away. It changed the way comedies are made on TV, and became one of the most famous sitcoms of all time in just 39 classic episodes. Every week people all over America tuned in to watch the working-class Cramdens, Ralph, the bus driver with big dreams, and Alice, his very patient and smart wife. Even when they fought loudly and violently, there was always a deep, unwavering love between them. Then Ed Norton came in. He was Ralph's strange but kind best friend from upstairs. Norton was played by Art Carney, and his deadpan delivery and strange habits made the show very funny. He stole scenes with almost no dialogue. Because of his work, Carney won an Emmy and became famous very quickly. He, Jackie Gleason, and Audrey Meadows seemed to have a natural connection with each other. People thought they were close, maybe even together off-screen too. However, that thought was very different from the truth. Things were not the same behind the scenes. Jackie Gleason spoke out loud. They are unreliable and sometimes have bad moods. Audrey Meadows was smart, sure of herself, and strong. But Art Carney was the quiet one. He kept to himself, didn't talk to many people on set, and left as soon as the movie was over. He was always on time, did a good job, and never caused problems. But he was far away. Biographers and crew members say that Carney and Meadows did not have much of a personal bond. Besides their planned scenes, they didn't talk to each other. They were not seen at events together. Years later, when TV shows and cast reunions happened, Art Carney was either not there at all, or didn't say a word. Often said nice things about the show's cast and appearances. She had nice things to say about Jackie, the experience, and how it helped her work, but Carney rarely if ever thanked him back. When he talked about the couples, Jackie was always the one he talked about. Then the most important thing happened. When Audrey Meadows died in 1996, a lot of people thought Carney would say something, anything, about the woman he worked with on one of the most famous TV shows ever. He never did though. There was no quote, no honor, and no recognition. A lot of people thought it was a quiet betrayal. Others didn't think much of it, seeing it as just another case of Carney's famous privacy. What it did though was bring up a much bigger question. Why would someone who cares so much about a memory choose to be quiet instead of saying something? It may sound strange, but the stress may have started a long time before the Honeymooners left. One thing brought Art Carney and Audrey Meadows together. Both of them worked as professionals. Neither of them made a scene on set, and both were praised for how hard they worked. Of course, being professional does not always mean being friendly. Reports from behind the scenes and interviews with people who worked on the show say that things were more difficult on the Honeymooners set than anyone let on. Jack Gleason had a tight grip on the show. He changed the script often at the last minute, and didn't practice much. He also expected the other players to keep up. Audrey Meadows quickly got used to it. She had worked in live TV before, and could match Gleason's pace and lack of predictability. However, that pace was too much for Art Carney. Throughout his career, Carney dealt with nervousness and alcoholism, which were kept secret from the public while the show was at its peak. He never missed a show, but behind the scenes it was hard for him because of the stress of live taping, Gleason's expectations, and the unpredictability of working on a set that was always changing. And that fight may have changed how he dealt with other people. Or to be more specific, he avoided talking to the people around him, including Audrey. Some sources say that Meadows' quick comedic timing sometimes put Carney on the spot during practices, which caused a little friendly competition. Some people think that Gleason, who valued order over harmony, kept the players from getting too close to each other by keeping them somewhat separate. It's also important to note that Meadows was very open in talks about her time on the show, but Carney never was. Carney actually didn't do many interviews. When he did, his answers were short, safe, and not very passionate. He tried to dodge questions about his co-stars, and when he was pushed, he would change the subject to the script, or the characters, instead of the people who played them. This mental distance made a wall that couldn't be seen. It was one that Audrey Meadows might have wanted to cross but never was able to. And when the cameras stopped rolling, and the Honeymooners' short run was over, Carney was rarely seen again. There were no wrap-up parties, sad goodbyes, or promises to stay in touch. He turned away and forgot about that part of the story. But what happened when they got back together years later made things even stranger. Jackie Gleason went back to his variety shows after the Honeymooners ended. Audrey Meadows got parts in movies and on TV, and Art Carney disappeared. Of course not really. He carried on playing. He was so good at acting that he got an Academy Award in 1975 for his part in Harry and Tonto. But when it came to the Honeymooners, Carney was nowhere to be found. He didn't just leave the show behind either. It was also the people. He was asked to reunions, but politely turned them down. When asked to be in retrospectives, he said no. When group members talked about their time together in public, Carney's absence stood out. In interviews, even Jackie Gleason, who had his own problems and ego, said nice things about Carney. He called him smart and a partner, and he said that Carney's sense of humor was a big part of the show's success. Audrey Meadows as well praised his timing and smarts in an indirect way. But Art, he didn't say anything. Always kind. Don't be mean. But never speak. Why? Some people think Carney had a hard time with the attention the Honeymooners gave him. He had never been after attention. In fact, Carney was said to have had significant anxiety and depression at the height of his fame. Fame made it even worse. People used to make him feel uncomfortable, and he liked it better when no one knew his name. He may have moved away from the show that made him popular for this reason. But what about Audrey? At that point, the quiet is unbearable. One producer from the Jackie Gleason show said that Carney and Meadows did not talk after the show finished. Not at tributes, parties for both of them, or even when they were asked to be a part of Honeymooners retrospectives. They both said no, and they never showed up together again. When Audrey Meadows died in 1996, fans thought that one of her former co-stars would say something. Carney was still living and well at the time, but he didn't say anything. It didn't send a message, recognize it, or say anything to the press. Was it sadness, guilt, or the space between them that making up would have seemed fake? Still no one knows. And just when it looked like the story couldn't get any stranger, it did. Audrey was interviewed a long time ago, and what she said may be the key to the whole puzzle. Art Carney decided to be quiet, but Audrey Meadows would sometimes talk, especially as she got older. In 1994, just 2 years before she died, she wrote a biography called Love, Alice. There, she wrote sweet things about the couples, Jackie Gleason's strict personality, and the fast-paced world of live TV. But what she said about Art Carney was noticeably limited. She said he was smart and kind, but she didn't say anything about a real bond. In a less well-known interview, from the early 1990s, she was asked directly about her relationship with Carney after the show. She stopped, looked down, and then spoke slowly and carefully. She said that even though we worked well together, we were still different. I don't think Art was ever really at ease with anyone, not even himself. Many people took that quiet line as a clever way to hint at his lifelong struggles with anxiety, drinking, and emotional distance. It wasn't a jab, it was a look back. A woman who had worked with him for years and shared the stage, the attention, and the hard work of weekly TV shows, but who had never really known him. Yes, even Jackie Gleason, who had fights with almost everyone, was said to have kept in touch with Audrey Meadows more than Carney ever did. She was aware of his departure. Meadows said in another radio interview that she sometimes wondered if Carney felt confused or misrepresented by his co-stars, not by the public. She said that he looked sad, and like he yearns for something, but he never let anyone get close enough to ask. When actors aren't working, fans often think that they become families, but the Honeymooners wasn't that kind of set. There was respect and love between them, but there was also space, and Carney seemed to like it that way. Meadows said that rehearsals were quick and polite, and that everyone usually went their different ways afterward. No parties after dinner or long lunches. She once said, "We clocked in, we clocked out." On screen it was magic, but behind the scenes it was quiet. Meadows also said in a subtle way that she and Carney never talked again after the show ended. They never talked when Gleason died in 1987, when the show was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame, or when fans started calling for an official reunion. People asked her if she ever reached out. She said, "I thought about it many times, but Art had already left that part of his life behind, which was the saddest part. She seemed to accept it." She told the reporter, "You have to understand that Art was a very private man. His need for room made me think he didn't know how to look back without getting hurt. What hurts you? That's something that fans and even people who work on the show never got. But there is one clue that adds a new level to the mystery. Someone had a public breakdown, and the name Art Carney never stopped saying." In 1961, not long after the Honeymooners got back together, Art Carney had what his family later called a mental breakdown. At the time, no one knew it. The rest of the world thought Carney was just taking a break. However, people who knew him well said he was in a bad spot and was struggling with sadness, anxiety, and a drinking problem that had started in the background years before. His bright, funny energy on screen hid a fight inside him that had been building up for a while. Some people thought that the high stress of live TV and the sudden fame might have caused it. Others thought it was deeper, and that Carney, who is from Mount Vernon, New York, and is the son of a newspaperman, was never meant to be famous. He was very sensitive and eager to please, and being in the spotlight never made him feel safe. It was said that even the loud applause of live audiences made him feel more exposed and valued. One writer said that Carney hated getting into fights. He would hide behind polite smiles and soft laughs even when he was on set rather than fight. That's why his funny timing looked so natural. He played the part of Ed Norton to hide, but Art Carney faded away as Norton became more well-known. Friends talked about how, at rap or cast parties, he would quietly leave early, and most of the time, no one would even know he was gone. During the Lovers run, he got married, but things in his personal life got worse. He and his wife got divorced, then got back together, and then got divorced again. At one point, Carney was so alone that his own children said he seemed like a ghost in their own home. Because he had to keep up public appearances, and was in a lot of pain, many of his best relationships broke up. During this time, allegedly broke up with a lot of old co-workers. Gleason tried to get in touch with her, and Audrey Meadows went to a number of events in the business, but Carney stayed away. There will be no red carpets, group shows or lookbacks. He turned down deals that would have paid him a lot of money because he didn't want to go over what he thought was over. When people asked him why he stayed away from the Honeymooners, he always gave a vague reason. He once said that it was a great time, but it was only a time. "I don't live in the past." But there was a quote buried deep in an old radio conversation that made me think of something more personal. He said that sometimes things end. When asked if he stayed in touch with his old co-stars, "You also don't know that the story is over, only to find that no one turned the page when you look back." Strange, beautiful and telling. Did you feel bad? A quiet nod to some spillover that wasn't said, or just the words of a man who never really felt like he belonged in the world he helped make. In any case, his silence was a loss for the Honeymooner. The next turn in the story made the puzzle even stronger. As Audrey Meadows was leaving this world, she said one last thing about Art Carney, and fans didn't think it would happen. Audrey Meadows was in the last stages of lung cancer in 1996. In honor of her memory, she gave one last interview to a close friend and reporter, but not for airing. She had a full life after the Lovers were gone. She was a successful banker and a supporter of women in business. However, the subject of her early TV days and Art Carney came up again and again. Her voice was quieter than normal, and she looked very weak. She stood up a little taller when asked about Carney, though, she said, "I always hoped we would talk again, even if it was just once. We weren't really angry with each other, but there are times when quiet is stronger than a fight." After a short pause, she said, "I think Art blamed himself for something. I don't know what it was, but I think being near things that made him think of the old him hurt him." The interviewer was shocked by the strange thing they said. When asked, Audrey just smiled and said, "People don't break up with friends for no reason, but not all reasons are spoken." She let it go right then. There was no blame or drama, just quiet acceptance of a bond that never ended. Some people think that the stress of the show, the tight schedule, and the fact that Carney didn't have as much power as Gleason did, made him tired. Some people think there may have been a fight off-screen that was never made public, but the truth is that nobody knows. Carney never talked about it himself. He died in 2003, and any answers he may have had were killed with him. What's left is a puzzle that fans have been trying to solve for decades. Why did Art Carney, who made people laugh every week, leave the family of the Honeymooners, not saying a word? Was it pain in their own lives, anger at work, or something deeper? The quiet between Audrey Meadows and Art Carney became its own story, even though no one will ever know the whole truth, not of scandal or betrayal, but of two great artists who were no longer connected, not with a fight, but with a sound that fades. Fans of the Honeymooners have always been curious about Art Carney's silence, which has been like a shadow behind the laughs. People will remember him as the nice sewer worker, with a big heart, who joked around with Jackie Gleason, while Audrey Meadows rolled her eyes in the background. Their rhythm was perfect, and their chemistry was ageless, but when the curtain came down, it was like a switch turned on. Art Carney stopped being a part of both the show and the people on it. He never said bad things about other people. He never made wrong complaints, but he also never looked back. For me, the most haunting part might be the silence, which lets you think, question, and be amazed. Was Carney haunted by something that happened while the show was being made? Did he feel bad about a choice, a word, or a moment? Or did he just want to get away from a time that made him feel stressed out more than happy? Audrey Meadows never showed anger. Instead, she was sad, as if she knew something important had been lost, and neither of them ever explained why. They were very quiet with each other, which stands out even more in a world where people love to share too much. That's proof that not all rifts are big. Some are quiet, take a while, and end. For it to feel personal when it happens between well-known and loved people like Carney and Meadows. You made us feel like we were a part of that friendship too. They made us laugh. They cared about us. They even left us with one last unplanned mystery. But we didn't know it. There was no ending or finish. There was only a question. What did really happen after the cameras stopped?